Hi guys, welcome. I hope you're all doing good. Today, let us discuss the budget 2024-25 to the point. When I say to the point, I'll only discuss those things that are actually relevant for any competitive exams, that are actually relevant for a student preparing for any government exams. So we'll only focus to the point of what is important from the exams perspective in the budget 2024-25. To understand the budget better, let us first divide the budget into 6 parts. The first part is fiscal management. Here, let us discuss about the fiscal prudence of the union government, how good has been the union government in handling its financials. It's very important. The second is the employment and skilling aspect. The government has brought a special package in order to reap the demographic dividend of India. So we'll understand that in the second pillar. The third division is agriculture. The government has come up with several initiatives to improve the resilience of agriculture and improve the productivity of agriculture. So that is another area that we will be focusing on. The next is urban transformation. Several announcements has been made in order to improve and make our urbanization more sustainable. So that is another area that we'll be focusing on. The next is infrastructure and industries. Infrastructure has always been a backbone of any economy, and on infrastructure comes the corollary, the industries, which are also as important for the growth of economy as the infrastructure. So we will discuss on the infrastructure and industries as the 5th pillar, and the 6th and final pillar that we'll be looking into is the energy security. What are the budgetary announcement that was made regarding energy security in India? So these are the 6 pillars that we'll be focusing on in this entire video from the exams perspective and to the point. Let us look into the fiscal management of the union government. The first is the estimation of nominal GDP by the budget 2024-25 is 10.5%. As you know, nominal GDP is real GDP plus inflation. Correct? So if the real GDP is somewhere that is assessed at 7%, the nominal GDP that is estimated to be in 2024-25 is 10.5% according to this budget. The next is, as you can see in the table, the deficit targets. As you all know, there is FRBM Act, that is Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, which prescribes that the government should control its debt levels, government should control its revenue deficit targets, as well as the government should control its fiscal deficit targets. And to make sure that it adheres to this FRBM Act, it should always make sure that it reduces or cuts its deficit targets. So now, as you're seeing in this particular table, the deficit targets of the last 3 years. Okay, so you have the actuals and you have the estimation. The estimation is for this current year, the actuals are of the previous years. So whenever I use the word actuals, it means the actual deficit that was incurred in the previous years. Whenever we are estimating, the estimation is for the current budgetary year. Okay, so I hope you understand the difference. Now, as you can see, the fiscal deficit, the revenue deficit and the primary deficit that you can see in this table, if you're looking at the performance of the government's performance has been overwhelmingly very good. It is fiscally very prudent in the way the government has handled its financials. As you can see, the fiscal deficit is an indicator of borrowings by the government for financing its expenditure. As you can see in the table, the fiscal deficit for 24-25 is at 4.9% of the GDP. Now this is lower than the actuals of 2023-24 that stands at 5.6% of the GDP. This is a very, very good thing. Now, the lower fiscal deficit is on account of growing of receipts at 15%, which is higher than the expenditure that is growing at 8.5%. So this is an information that you should know. So the lowering fiscal deficit in India is basically because of the receipts that is outgrowing the expenditure. Receipts are growing at 15%, whereas the expenditure is growing at 8.5%. Hence, you're seeing this lower fiscal deficit in the Indian government's financials. So that's again a very, very good and a prudent way of handling its financial, that is regarding the fiscal deficit. Now, along with that, if you just look at the revenue deficit. Now, revenue deficit is the excess of revenue expenditure or revenue receipts. Now, as you can see, such a deficit, whenever there is a revenue deficit, that implies that the government has to borrow funds to meet the recurring expenditures, which may not give any full-time returns. That should be very, very important. Hence, revenue deficit should not be very high because it does not give you any returns and it is basically spent on consumption or recurring expenditures. Okay. However, if you look at the estimated revenue deficit for 2024-25, it stands at 1.8% of the GDP. This is again lower than the actuals of 2023-24. Okay, in 2023-24, the revenue deficit was 2.6%, and now the estimation of the revenue deficit is almost cut down to 1.8%, which is again a good and prudent way of moving of the union government regarding the financials. And finally, if you look at the primary deficit is nothing but fiscal deficit less the interest payments. If you remove the interest payments from the fiscal deficit, then it becomes primary deficit. Now this primary deficit is also estimated at 1.4% for the 2024-25 year, and it is come down from the actuals of 2023-24, which was standing at 2%. So from 2%, the primary deficit is also come down to 1.4%. So regarding the entire fiscal prudence of union government, it has been going in the proper direction because one, the receipts are outgrowing the expenditure at the overall level, and if you look at all the three deficits, the fiscal deficit standing at 4.9%, the revenue deficit standing at 1.8%, and the primary deficit standing at 1.4% shows that Indian financials are in good hands. Also, the finance minister has aimed or told that the government will aim to reduce the fiscal deficit to below 4.5% of the GDP by 2025-26. That again shows the government's commitment towards fiscal prudence and fiscal responsibility. So, once we are done with the deficit targets, now let us just understand a brief outlook of what has been the receipts highlights as well as the expenditure highlights within the budget 2024-25. If you take the receipts highlights and the expenditure highlights, it is important for you to know this because it makes you financially aware about the Indian economy, as well as you can use these within your answers that shows how well you can substantiate the financial trajectory or the financial development that is happening within the Indian economy. So these are few things that you should be aware of, not only from the exam's perspective, but it's also important as a citizen of India to understand the management of receipts and expenditure that is happening within the union government. So if you take the revenue receipts, the very important aspects of revenue receipts is, one, the overall receipts, excluding the borrowing, the overall receipts stands at 32,07,200 crore rupees. If you take this sum, it is an increase. The receipts have increased by 15% over its previous actuals of 2023-24. So compared to the previous year, there is 15% rise in the receipts of the government. Okay, the next is, why is this rise in the receipts? The main contribution is the center's net tax collection. The center's net tax collection has been robust, and this has fed the receipts and increasing the percentage of receipts compared to its previous years. Okay, next, if I take the tax, the gross tax revenue of the government has grown or is estimated to grow at 10.8% in 2024-25. Look at this, 10.8% is greater than the nominal GDP growth that this budget has estimated. The nominal GDP growth that is estimated is 10.5%, but the gross tax revenue is estimated at 10.8% for the fiscal year of 2024-25, which shows that our tax revenue is going to feed the Indian economy for a greater extent in the future, in the near future of India. Okay, so one, you understood the receipts as a whole has grown by 15%. The second is you have understood the gross tax revenue has grown by 10.8, is estimated to grow at 10.8% in 2024-25. The next is devolution to states, fiscal federalism. Devolution to states from the center's tax revenue is going to be at 12,47,211 crore rupees in 2024-25. Now this sum is not important. Whatever sum I am going to tell, don't try to keep it in your mind. You will not be able to memorize. But what you should understand is the devolution of, the devolution to states from the center's tax revenue is increased by 10.4% compared to the actuals of 2023-24. This is important. So the fiscal federalism is robust. There is a proper synchronicity between the center and the state within the fiscal sphere, because compared to the previous year, there has been a rise in the devolution of funds from the center to the states, especially its tax revenue of almost 10.4%. So that is another good thing that is happening. So that is the next. The next is the non-tax revenue. If I take the non-tax revenue, it basically is the money that comes from dividends, licenses, fees, tolls, and other charges that the government accrues from the government services. So these are the non-tax revenue. Even in the non-tax revenue, the non-tax revenue has risen by 36% over the actuals of 2023-24. So the estimation says that in this year 2024-25, there will be a rise of 36% compared to the actuals of 2023-24 with respect to non-tax revenue. So receipts are rising at 15%, gross tax revenue is rising at 10.8%, devolution to states is estimated to rise at 10.4%, and the non-tax revenue is estimated to rise by 36%. Finally, the capital receipts, which are very, very important, the capital receipts, these are also seeing a rise of or increase of 29%. It is estimated to increase by 29% over the actuals of 2023-24. Okay, so overall, if you take, these are the 5 important informations from the receipts, highlights that you should have in your mind. This shows that when the receipts are increasing, that gives the government greater leverage to spend this on the welfare of the public and the welfare of the country as a entirety. So this is about the receipts highlights. Now let us look at the expenditure highlights of the government. If I take the total expenditure, the government is estimated to spend 48,20,512 crore rupees in 2024-25. Again, the sum is not that important, so don't try to memorize the sum as a whole. But if you take the entire expenditure, the total expenditure, the expenditure of the government is said to be increasing at 8.5% over the actuals of 2023-24. Okay, now in the receipts, you saw that the receipts is increasing at 15% compared to its previous years, whereas the expenditure is increasing at 8.5% compared to its previous years. So the estimation in this budget shows that our receipts will override our expenditure, which is a good fiscal prudence. Okay, so that is the first thing. The second, if I take the revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, revenue expenditure is basically the expenditure that is done on pensions, defense expenditure, subsidies, major schemes like MGNREGA, Jal Jeevan Mission. These are something that is known, or that is where the revenue expenditure goes. Okay, so if I take the revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure, I told you the expenditure as a total expenditure is growing at 8.5%. So revenue expenditure inside that is growing at 6.2% and capital expenditure is growing at 17.1%. That is again a good news. Capital expenditure grows, that means your assets are increasing, that means that your investments are increasing. So this will help the economy in the long run. So hence, again, the fiscal prudence of the union government should be applauded, because the capital expenditure is growing at a faster rate compared to the revenue expenditure, which is mainly on recurring or committed aspects. So this is about the expenditure highlights. Now, once we now saw the total expenditure, the revenue expenditure as well as the capital expenditure, now let us focus on the expenditure on subsidies. Has it been increasing or has it been decreasing? In 2024-25, the total expenditure on subsidies is estimated to be at 4,38,423 crore rupees. Again, the sum is not important. What is important is, in 2024-25, the total expenditure on subsidies is declining, and there is a decrease of 0.5% from the actual expenditure of 2023-24. So there is a decline of 0.5% compared to its previous years. This is good or bad. This depends on your context. Okay. Now we are reducing the subsidies, or is it resulting in cutting down on the welfareism aspect of the government, or we are reducing the subsidies so this improves the efficiency of the working of the government and the governance? This is a topic that you can discuss within your answers. We are not here today to discuss on the effects of reduction of subsidies. I am only here to discuss the budget. So I am going to give you facts. You are going to take the call on how you are going to debate it in your answers. But my take is, use the facts in however way you want. You want to show that there is reduction in subsidies to increase the efficiency, fine. You want to show that there is reduction in subsidies which reflects reduction in the welfareism of the union government, fine. Use it however you want to. Facts can be used in any way you want to. You can set the narrative, so don't worry about it. Just learn the facts properly so that you can use it in whatever context or demand of the question. That is what is smartness, and that is what is important. Alright. So if I take the expenditure on subsidies, so in 2024-25, there has been a decrease of 0.5% from the actual expenditure of 2023-24. That is a very important aspect. Now, if you can see this table here that I'm going to show, you can see that there is one food subsidy, So the second important is fertilizer subsidy, and the third important is LPG subsidy. Now, if you take all the three, the food subsidy, the fertilizer subsidy, as well as the LPG subsidy, you are seeing that there is a decline. Can you see that percentage change compared to the previous year to this year? In the percentage change, look at the food subsidy. There has been 3.1% decrease in the food subsidy compared to its previous years. There has been a decrease of minus 13.5% in the fertilizer subsidy in this year compared to the previous actuals of 2023-24. And if you take the LPG also, there has been a slight decrease of minus 2.6%. Okay, so overall, you're seeing in all the subsidies, the most important subsidies that we are seeing, there has been a decline, and substantial decline has happened in fertilizer subsidy. Okay, so this is again very important facts that you can know for your exams perspective. After looking at the subsidies, now let us look at how the expenditure trend has happened on major schemes, flagship schemes of the government. That again is important for your exams perspective as well as a knowledge about the Indian welfare schemes. Now, if you look at this table that I'm going to show you, these are the expenditure on major schemes that has been allocated in the budget 2024-25. The largest allocation has gone to MGNREGA. Okay, as you can see, the allocation is almost 86,000 crore rupees. However, if you look at the percentage change, there has been neither increase nor decrease. It has remained the same. Though MGNREGA is the highest allocation of some to a particular program, compared to its previous years, there has not been much change. It is remaining the same. So that is the first allocation. The second rank is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Now the government is pushing for affordable housing, especially for the middle income households. So this affordable housing, if you see, this has the second highest allocation. Okay, it has allocation of around 84,000 crore rupees. Okay, and if you can see the actuals of previous year compared to this year, you're seeing almost 56% rise in the allocation in affordable housing category. Okay, especially in urban areas. We will come back to that in urban transformation. You're seeing that 1 crore extra households have been added as a target to increase the reach of affordable housing, especially in urban areas. So that is why you are seeing this reflection of increase of allocation of almost 56.5% in respect to Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. The third allocation is Jal Jeevan Mission. This is a drinking water mission, and you're seeing that the allocation is somewhere around 70,000 crore rupees, and there is a very slight increase of 0.2% inside that. The next is PM Kisan Yojana. Okay, so here also you are seeing the fourth highest allocation of around 60,000 crore rupees. However, if you compare to the previous year, the actuals, it's not increased, it is more or less remained the same. The next very important is the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Now this is important because it acts as a foundation for the children's education, and here you are seeing that the allocation is 37,500 crores. That comes up to almost 13.8% increase in the allocation compared to its previous years. So that is good. Investing more in education is always good for the future of the nation. And the next is the National Health Mission. So if you take the National Health Mission, you are again seeing that there is a rise of 14% of allocation of funds compared to its previous years. So these are the 6 important flagship schemes of the government, and here you're seeing that when it comes to affordable housing, when it comes to education, and when it comes to health, you're seeing a rise in the increase in allocation compared to its previous years. But if you take the rural employment and you take the PM Kisan Yojana, and also if you are looking at Jal Jeevan Mission, not much change in the allocation compared to its previous years. So these are the 6 important schemes and how the government is playing it out in this budget 2024-25. Next, let us talk a little bit about the inclusivity and how the government is pushing for inclusivity. I'm going to show you a table. Here it goes. So in this table, you can see the allocation in budget 24-25 for women, children, SCs, STs, as well as Northeastern region. Now, our finance minister had cited that, for women, more than 3 lakh crore has been allocated. As you can see in this table, the sum is exactly 3,27,158 crore rupees. Don't try to buy out this sum. That is not important. What is important is the percentages. Okay. So if you look at the welfare of women, 18.9% rise in the allocation compared to its previous years. Welfare of children, 17.4% rise in the allocation compared to its previous years. Scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, 12.7% and 14.3% rise compared to its previous years respectively. And the northeastern region, there is 9.9% rise in the allocation compared to its previous years. These figures are important because this can be used to substantiate how welfareism is still preserved, how balanced regional development is still preserved, and how the government is pushing for inclusivity within our economy. So this again is a very, very important fiscal indicators of the government to show how fiscal prudence is also brought with fiscal inclusivity. So I hope the fiscal management of the union government was helpful. I have tried to cover all the fiscal indicators that you can use in your exam, and I have made sure that every fiscal indicator that I have told is to the point. Okay, I have not created a lot of jargons, a lot of numbers that will going to confuse you. I kept it as simple as possible so that you can recollect and you can use these facts in your answers. And that is the entire objective of this budget session that I'm taking. Okay, so this completes the fiscal management. Let us move on to the next pillar. The next pillar is employment and skilling. As I told you, the government is pushing on employment skilling because it wants to reap the demographic dividend of India. Okay, so the government has unveiled a robust package. Okay, they call it the Prime Minister's package. It is 5 different initiatives that the government has come out with. Now this package is aiming to bolster employment and skill development, targeting almost 4.1 crore youth in the next 5 years. Okay, that is a huge objective. If this fulfills, I think the unemployment problem that is actually rising within this country can be solved if this can be implemented to its effective way that it has been told. Okay, so this is the employment and skilling. 4.1 crore youth in the next 5 years is huge. So you should know these numbers. So what are these package schemes that the union government has introduced? So within the package scheme, there are 3 schemes for employment. There are 2 schemes for skilling. Let us first look at the employment schemes, the 3 schemes for employment, which they are calling it as Scheme A, Scheme B and Scheme C. Okay, 3 schemes to promote employment and increase workforce participation, as I told you, is one Scheme A, which is called wage support for first timers. Here the government is trying to provide up to 15,000 rupees for those first time employees who are registered in the Employees Provident Fund Organization, which is called EPFO. Scheme B is job creation in manufacturing. Here the government will help both the employees and the employers in the manufacturing sector regarding the EPFO contributions. The third is Scheme C. This is basically for the employers. So the employers have to pay their contribution to EPFO regarding the employees. In this regard, when it comes to a new employee, the government will contribute 3,000 rupees per month on behalf of the employer for up to 2 years for each new employee. So I hope you understood the 3 schemes. Scheme A is wage support for the new employee. Scheme B is job creation in manufacturing. And Scheme C is the employer's contribution in EPFO for the new employee. So these are the 3 schemes to increase the employment opportunities of Indian youth within the Indian economy. Now coming to the skilling part. The skilling part involves 2 important packages that have been announced. The first package is upskilling the youth. The aim is basically to upskill 20 lakh youth over 5 years, and 1,000 industrial training institutes will be upgraded to meet the skilling needs of the industry. Okay, so that is upskilling youth. This is one part of the initiative, the 4th package. The 5th package is internship opportunities. Okay, so in internship opportunities, basically here the internship opportunities is provided for 1 crore youth in 500 top companies. Beneficiaries will receive a monthly allowance of rupees 5,000 and a one-time assistance of rupees 6,000. And companies can bear the training cost and 10% of the internship cost from their corporate social responsibility funds. So that is again a very unique thing. So the corporate social responsibility fund, they can use the training cost as well as 10% of the internship cost from this CSR funds. So this again streamlines their CSR funds to incentivize employment as well as using it for social cause. So this is a very good innovative way of trying to make win-win situation on both the sides. So however, these are the 5 important packages: Scheme A, Scheme B, Scheme C, as well as upskilling youth through industrial training institutions and internship opportunities. So these are the 5 important parts that have been announced, or packages that have been announced in order to reap the demographic dividend of India. So now, since we are done with the fiscal management and we are also done with the employment and skilling aspect, let us move on to the next important pillar, that is agriculture. In agriculture, the budget is mainly looking in order to build resilience as well as improve productivity. So in this regard, the total allocation for the Department of Agriculture and Family Welfare stands at 1,22,528 crore rupees. Again, the sum is not important. What is important is the allocation of money to the agricultural department is 4.9% higher compared to its previous years. That is very important. Okay, so there has been an allocation of more than 5% or 4.9% to be exact of budget compared to its previous years. Next, if you take the Department of Agricultural Research and Education, again the allocation there has been increased by 0.65% compared to its previous years. You can argue that it is less, you can argue that there has been a rise. So the context depends on what the demand of the answer is and what substantiation or justification that you have to do within the answer. Use it wisely in however you want to use it. You are the narrator, you set the narrative. Okay, so I am not going to discuss on the pros and cons of it. I am only going to give the facts, what happened in the budget. Using of that facts depends on your wisdom, and I hope you will do it by practicing a lot of answer writing. That is how you build your skills of answer writing. Okay. However, if you take the total agricultural allocation, there has been a rise of 4.91% compared to its previous years. If you take research and education, agricultural research and agricultural education, there has been a rise of 0.65% compared to its previous years. If you take fisheries, animal husbandry and dairying, there has been a rise of almost 27.12% compared to its previous years. All the 3 shows that the government's focus has been on agriculture, it has not reduced. But again, in the previous fiscal management, we have seen that if you take the MG and Rega, the allocation is almost the same compared to its previous years. Okay, and if you take PM Kisan, the allocation is almost the same compared to its previous years. So this is how you can use to argue on either sides, but using of the data depends on you having that wisdom to use it in the context and not abstractly. Okay, so this is regarding the agricultural aspect. Now, in order to improve the productivity and resilience in agriculture, the government has come up with 5 important initiatives. The first is, it is giving a push towards transforming agricultural research. Okay, the research will be mainly focusing on raising productivity and developing climate resilient varieties. That is the first announcement that was made in the budget. So transforming agricultural research. The second is national cooperation policy. Okay, basically this is all-round development of cooperative sectors that will definitely help the farmers and the rural areas. The third is Atmanirbharta, especially in the oil seeds. This is where we are lagging behind. We are mainly dependent on imports. So Atmanirbharta in oil seeds such as mustard, groundnut, sesame, soya bean and sunflower. Okay, so this is the third important focus area of the government. The next is vegetable production and supply chain. Since vegetables are perishables, most of them are lost due to post-harvest losses because of bad storage measures. Here the government is focusing on promoting FPOs, farmer producer organizations, cooperatives and startups for vegetable supply chains for collection, storage and marketing. That improves our food processing as a whole and more specifically our vegetable sector. So that is the fourth focus. The fifth focus is the release of new varieties. Okay, 109 new high yielding and climate resilient varieties of 32 field and horticultural crops will be released for cultivation to farmers. So these are the 5 areas of focus in order to improve the resilience and productivity of agriculture. Let me just reiterate them once again. 1, transforming agricultural research, especially focusing on improving productivity and resilience by climate resilient varieties, developing climate resilient varieties. The second is improving the all-round development of cooperative sector. The third is Atmanirbharta in oil seeds, especially the mustard, the groundnut, sesame, soya bean as well as sunflower. Vegetable production and supply chain robustness or strengthening is what is the focus. And the last is the release of new varieties, almost 109 high yielding varieties and climate resilient varieties of 32 field and horticultural crops that will be available to the farmers for growing. So these are the 5 important focus areas to improve the productivity and resilience in agriculture. Along with this, the government is also focusing on natural farming. In natural farming, 1 crore farmers across the countries will be initiated into natural farming. This is supported by certification also in the next 2 years. Okay. Along with that, there is also a focus on shrimp production, okay, which is going to be facilitated through credit by NABARD. And along with that, the next is bringing technology into rural development or agriculture is digital public infrastructure. So basically, the government has announced that the digital public infrastructure will cover the farmers and their lands in the next 3 years. Okay. Also, there will be a digital crop survey in 400 districts, and there will be issuance of Jan Samhita based Kisan credit cards. So this is where digitization of agriculture is also happening. So along with the 5 focus areas, natural farming, shrimp production, as well as digitization of agriculture is the focus area of the government in budget 2024-25. After looking at fiscal management, employment and skilling and agriculture, now let us look at urban transformation. Okay, urban areas are very, very crucial because urban areas are approximately home to 50 crore people. That accounts to almost 36% of the country's population. And if you take urbanization, the urban population has been growing at a steady pace of 2 to 2.5% annually. So if you look at urbanization in India, it is very crucial. If we have to make our urbanization sustainable, our urbanization balanced, then the government's focus areas in urbanization is very, very important for your answers as well as your knowledge from a good citizen's angle. Okay, so urban transformation, if you look at the housing initiatives in urban areas, one of the most important inhibiting factor is housing. Okay, one, there is no affordable housing and there is the rising of slums. So the government, in order to tackle this, has come up with what you call increasing allocation within the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Okay, now this Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is a program for affordable housing that started in 2015. So it provides affordable housing for economically weaker sections as well as middle income groups. So basically, the government has proposed to construct an additional 1 crore household units in urban areas with an investment of 10 lakh crore rupees. As we discussed in the fiscal management, there has been a rise in allocation of the finances compared to its previous years by almost 56%. And the reason there is increase in the allocation is because of this extra 1 crore household unit that the government has decided to construct, especially in the urban areas, which is again very, very crucial to make sure that our urbanization is sustainable and inclusive. Okay, because the population there is mainly migrants, they require affordable housing. It will also attract more migrants, and hence this fact is very, very important. Okay, the next is within the housing, the government is introducing something called rental housing for industrial workers. Okay, many migrants who come to urban areas are living in slums. Okay, so in this budget, the budget has introduced rental housing with dormitory type accommodation for industrial workers. This will be developed on PPP basis with the financial support given by the government as a means of viability gap funding. Okay, so viability gap funding means what? It means there is essential economic essentiality and there is financial unviability. Okay, you have a project, that project is economically essential but financially unviable. So when it is financially unviable but economically essential, no private player is going to take part in that project because that project is not viable financially. Now here the government will step in. The government will step in because it's economically essential for India to undertake that project, and the government will supply that much amount of money to make this unviability of the finance to make it financially viable. So that is what is known as viability gap funding. So it is going to finance the gap between financial unviability to financial viability. That is what is viability gap funding. Anyways, so the government has proposed this dormitory type accommodation for industrial workers. That is a type of rental housing in a PPP mode with a clause that the government is going to interfere with respect to viability gap funding mode here. This will help reduce the rise of slums within the urbanization, and it will make our urbanization more sustainable. So in that regard, it's a very, very good move. This is the 2 important schemes that the government has focused on, especially in housing within the urban areas. The next focus area in urban regions are basic services. When you say basic services, it means water supply, it means sanitation, it means roads, it means sewage. So this basic supplies or basic necessities in urban areas were undertaken by a project called Amrut. What is Amrut? Amrut is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. This provides almost 8,000 crore rupees for the urban areas in order to provide or increase its basic services within the urban areas. But the government has recognized this 8,000 crore rupees is not enough in order to strengthen its basic services, and for that the government again, as in this budget 2024-25, announced that projects can be taken up by PPP mode as a commercial venture, and the union government will again interfere, or it will try to give a viability gap funding window for these projects that are taken up as a commercial venture in PPP mode. So apart from the Amrut fund, allocation of fund for basic services, the basic services can also be done on PPP mode as a commercial venture with an access to viability gap funding by the government. This is again another step by the government to make our urbanization more sustainable, to improve the basic services, especially for the urban poor. Okay, so this is regarding the basic services in urban areas. Outside this, there is also something called National Urban Digital Mission that is launched. What is this National Urban Digital Mission? It is digitalization of property and tax records. Digitalization of property and tax records will help improve the urban local government's governance as well as financial capabilities, and also it will assist the property owners. It will allow them to lease the land, rent the land, and it will help both the urban owners as well as the urban local government. So in that regard, the National Urban Digital Mission has also been a watershed movement within the urbanization within India. Outside this, there is also a transit-oriented development way of planning. Basically, the development happens along major routes of the urban areas. This helps in orderly development of the urban areas rather than clustering. That in turn will help in balanced regional development and sustainable urbanization. So the mass rapid transit system that goes across the urban areas, development will be focused on these routes, and the development will spread width-wise and will reduce the concentration and congestion in one point. So this again helps in the sustainability factor of urbanization. Finally, the government, in order to help the street vendors, the government had brought something called Street Vendors Act. Above this, the government is also introducing something called a scheme to develop 100 weekly hearths, or street food hubs in select cities. That will help these street vendors improve their income or remuneration. Outside this also, the government is introducing something called sewage waste management. Here also the government is giving viability gap funding mode accessibility for those projects that are going to be taken up on PPP mode. So this is again a good news that will help strengthen the solid waste management within the urban areas. So these are some of the few important announcement that was made in budget 2024-25 that helps in making our urban areas inclusive, sustainable and balanced. So I hope this was helpful. The next pillar that we'll be focusing on is industries and infrastructure. First, let us look at the infrastructure. If you take the infrastructure, very important fact is one, total capital expenditure that they have allocated in the budget 2024-25 is almost over 11 lakh crores. This 11 lakh crores in capital expenditure comes up to almost 3.4% of India's GDP. That is huge, and that is going into capital expenditure that is only going to give long-term returns for India as a very robust economy. The second is, if you take the regional infrastructural development, support to states is given up to the tune of 1.5 lakh crore rupees. The states can make this available in order to improve their regional infrastructural development, and this 1.5 lakh crore rupees will be given in the form of interest-free long-term loans to the states in order to improve their regional infrastructure. The third is viability gap funding will be provided in infrastructural sector in order to improve the private sector contributions or private sector participation. The fourth is the government has announced the development of 12 industrial parks under the National Industrial Corridor Development Program. The fifth is the Critical Minerals Mission has been announced that enhances domestic production, recycling and overseas acquisition of critical minerals that are essential for the country's industrial and technological needs. So these are the 5 areas within the infrastructure the government has focused on. Now if I come to industries, there has been a lot of programs that has been introduced for MSMEs. The medium, small and micro enterprises have been a backbone of India's manufacturing sector. They contribute to overall 40%, more than 40% of manufacturing's GDP, as well as they contribute more than 50% of India's manufacturing exports. So MSMEs are very, very critical for the success of Indian economy, and for that this budget has announced a slew of measures. Let us look at what they are. First, let us look at the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. This was launched in 2015 to provide small and micro enterprises credit of up to 10 lakh rupees, which is collateral free and which is easy, especially in non-corporate and non-farm sector. Okay, now the limit was 10 lakhs. Now those people who have availed the loans and who have repaid the loans successfully, for them the Mudra Yojana has expanded its loan for up to 20 lakhs now. So that is the first change that has been announced in the budget 2024-25. The second is there is a credit guarantee scheme that is launched for MSMEs, especially in manufacturing sector. So if you see, job creation in manufacturing sector was one focus. Now the MSMEs in manufacturing is the second focus. So the government is pushing the manufacturing sector so that somehow there is contribution of manufacturing to GDP that rises almost up to 20 to 25%, which is very, very far-sighted goal, but that is something that the government is aiming for. But this credit guarantee scheme for MSMEs in manufacturing sector, this will provide them loans for purchasing machinery and equipments, and this will be collateral free. And there is a fund that has been set up, a guarantee fund with a corpus of around 100 crore rupees that is basically able to provide the guarantee cover up for these MSMEs. So this is the second focus area of MSMEs in the budget 2024-25. The third is the new assessment that the budget and the finance minister has proposed for the scheduled commercial banks. Now this new assessment will create an internal capabilities of PSP rather than relying on external assessments. Basically, it will develop an independent in-house mechanism in order to assess MSMEs for providing them credit. So this new assessment model is again the the initiative that was announced in the budget 2024-25. The next is the TREADS platform. When I say the TREADS platform, it means the trade receivables e-discounting platform. It is an online platform where the trade receivables are converted into cash for the enterprises, the MSMEs. Now here, the threshold limit that was set for the MSMEs to participate in this TREADS platform was 500 crores. Now this has been cut by half to 250 crores. So any MSMEs that have a turnover of about 250 crores can participate in this TREADS platform in order to convert their trade receivables into cash. So this allows almost 22 central public sector enterprises to participate in TREADS, along with over 7,000 more companies that can come into this platform. This not only provides cash but also improves the entire financial ecosystem of the MSMEs. So these are some of the focus areas of MSMEs, industries and infrastructure in budget 2024-25. Now let us look at the sixth and the final pillar of the budget 2024-25, the energy security. The union budget has allocated 19,100 crore rupees for Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. The government has also highlighted Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Now here the government has estimated 1 crore households to obtain free electricity up to the tune of 300 units per month. And the government has also highlighted that there has been 1.28 crore registrations that has happened regarding Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Let me give you a context of why they have highlighted this. What happens is, government has been pushing for solar energy mission. The national solar mission has been pushed in India in order to increase our solar energy generation potential. We have been successful because solar energy is the highest energy generation of renewable energy within our renewable energy capacity. Now, what has happened is within the solar energy, there are two parts. One is the solar farms, another is the rooftop solar. Okay, so solar energy, the total capacity is 85 gigawatts approximately. In that 85 gigawatts of the total solar energy capacity that we have generated, out of that only 12 gigawatts come from solar rooftop. So solar rooftop within the solar energy has been in a backdrop. It has not taken off in the way that the government intended it to. However, the potential for developing solar rooftop is very high, and on that backdrop, this initiative of Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana was launched. Basically, this program is incentivizing people to increase their rooftop solar energy generation. So the solar rooftop is the focus area, and the focus area, when this particular program was announced, the focus was to bring almost 10 million households under this program, and that 10 million households has been achieved, and that is why they are highlighting that, highlighting that fact of 1.28 crore registration of households under this Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. So I hope you got the background. However, it is a good thing that 1.28 crore registrations have been done. More than 1 crore households will be getting free electricity to the tune of 300 units per month is good. It also shows that we are moving towards sustainability, especially with respect to electricity and power consumption. Okay, so this is regarding the Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Let us move on to the next one. The next is the government is bringing out a policy for pumped hydro storage. Okay, this is a very critical and strategic move by the government because it helps to overcome the intermittency problem of renewable energy generation. Okay, now let me just give you a context of what is this intermittency problem and what is this pumped water storage. Now this pumped water storage is a concept that was asked in the prelims that happened a few months back. Now that is what they are now bringing it in this particular budget. So let us understand what this is. First, renewable energy generation will always have intermittency problems. For example, if you take solar energy, the sun rays will not be the same intensity throughout the year. There will be months that will have high intensity insolation. There will be months that will have low intensity insolation. So in times of low intensity insolation, the solar energy generation will reduce. In times of high intensity insolation, the solar generation will be high. So look at this, there is an intermittency problem throughout the year where there will be some intermittent period where the solar energy generation will drop. How to overcome this problem of intermittency problem with respect to solar energy, wind energy or any renewable energy is through this concept of pumped water storage. What is this pumped water storage? Now look, let us say that I have a reservoir. You know what is a reservoir? Where the water is stored. So in pumped water storage, there are two reservoirs. One reservoir is the lower reservoir, the second is the upper reservoir. Okay, now see, what they do is, during the times of peak renewable energy generation, let us say that if there is solar energy, the intensity of solar energy is very high, so the electricity generation via solar energy is very high. In those times, what they do is, the renewable energy that is excess or that is surplus, they use that surplus energy to pump the water from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir. So they will pump this water from the lower reservoir and store it in the upper reservoir during the times of excess renewable energy. Okay, now let us say there is an intermittent period where the electricity generation via renewable energy is low. Now, during the times where the renewable energy is low, what they do is, they'll allow the water in this upper reservoir to go through the pipe, turn the turbine, produce electricity and go to the lower reservoir. So, during the times when the renewable energy generation is low, the water can be used from the upper reservoir through the tunnel to the lower reservoir to turn the turbine to produce electricity. So when during the intermittent level the renewable energy is low, this electricity that is produced via this water going from one reservoir to another, this electricity can make up for the deficit. So this is how during the peak time they'll use the surplus to generate the water upwards, and during the deficit times they'll allow the water to flow downwards, generating electricity to make up for the deficit. This is what is the water storage, pumped water storage concept. So the government has announced in budget 2024-25 to bring out a policy on this pumped water storage, that is hydro storage, that will overcome the intermittency problem of renewable energy generation. This is again a very critical and a strategic move by the government of India. Two disappointments that has happened is biogas. In the interim budget that was announced, the finance minister had promised that there will be 750 compressed biogas plants that will be set up by 2028-29. However, in this budget, there was no mention of that at all. So the biogas has been neglected compared to the interim budget in this budget. The next is wind energy. We have currently around 25 gigawatts of installed capacity of wind energy, and Tamil Nadu is one of the highest wind energy state in India, but no allocation or no mention was done on the wind energy aspect. So these are the two parts of the energy security where our government has not announced any incentives or allocations, which is sort of a disappointment. However, regarding the pumped hydro storage concept and overcoming the intermittency problem, as well as the Pradhan Mantri Surya Har Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana has been successful, and this shows the robustness of energy security and the focus of government in order to increase the energy security of India. So I hope these 6 pillars were helpful. You can use these 6 pillars as 6 different sections within your mains exam and write answers on it. That will help you in substantiating the arguments within the questions. So with this, I'm going to end the video. There will be a document that will be available to you. You can go to my Telegram channel. The document will be pinned and you can download the document. The document is detailed. The document has a lot of figures and facts that are unnecessary. So I would not want you to just download the document and keep it. Just mark it there. What I want you to do, if you're a sincere candidate, is when you're listening to the class, please make sure that you write down those things by your hand, and that is what is going to stick, and that is what you're going to use in your answers. Only if you put the pain, you'll get the pleasure of writing a good answer. If you don't want to put the pain, if you use the shortcuts in order to save time, which you're not saving by the way, you're not going to develop the effectiveness in your answers by using the facts. You can only internalize the facts if you write it by your hand, if you read it many number of times. So that can happen only if you write it many number of times. So I hope this session was helpful. I've tried to keep it to the point. I've tried to keep it simplified, and I've tried to keep it exam oriented. I hope you liked it, guys. If you like it, please like, share and subscribe. Send it to as many friends as possible so that it motivates us to do more such videos. I'll meet you again, guys. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Bye.